All right, we're now going to take a look ahead. This show is Luty's Look Back, so we look back. But for our last 10 minutes or so of the show, we're going to be looking ahead to the regionals that all our teams have. So we'll talk Arkansas's regional in Lawrence. We'll talk Little Rock's regional in Hattiesburg. And then we'll, of course, talk Arkansas softball and the Women's College World Series. We'll first start with the Lawrence regional. Got Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri State, and Northeastern. These are the four teams. Whoever wins this will face off in a super regional matchup against the Georgia Tech regional, the Atlanta regional, which will most likely be Georgia Tech. It's one of the top teams in the country this season, very explosive offensively. When you talk about offensive teams, yes, you can talk Georgia Tech out of the ACC, but you also got to talk the Kansas Jayhawks. That's one thing to know about them, and here's kind of the rundown of what I'm going to go through, a little bit about each team. So when you watch this game, you'll become a little bit more familiar and also give my prediction. I'm going to go ahead and say that Arkansas is going to come out of this regional victorious, but it's not going to be as easy as you think. Because, of course, they play Missouri State in their very first game, and that is in and of itself a challenge because Arkansas, of course, has already faced the Bears twice this season. One time on a neutral site field, they lost by one run, 15-14 in like 10 or 11 innings. It was a crazy game. Then they came back a month later, back in April, had this game in Fayetteville. The Razorbacks won in run rule fashion, 12-4. Missouri State's a good team. They're good offensively. They're top 50 batting average team in the country. Pitching, though, not so much. They average about 6 earned runs per game. So as well as Arkansas has been hitting the ball, I like Arkansas' chances in this game, and then probably facing off against Kansas in the next matchup. We didn't have a full bracket because it gets a little complicated when you get to double elimination, but it will be a full bracket. It's important that Arkansas wins the first 2 games, and they're really set up for success. It takes 3 wins to advance to the next round, which will be the Super Regional. So Arkansas, Missouri State will face off first. Of course, it's double elimination, so if the Razorbacks were to lose, they still get a chance, but not too often. Probably not ever Arkansas has lost the first game of the regional and then be able to come back and still win that regional. So that's a little bit about Arkansas and Missouri State. Kansas, I mentioned how good they are offensively. 102 home runs on the year. That is top 16 in the country. Tyson LeBlanc is the guy to watch for the Jayhawks. He's got 21 home runs on the season. Offensively, they force a lot of walks. They're top 15 in the country in forcing walks. Pitching, not as amazing. They're about 100th in the country in earned run average as far as pitching, so they're not amazing in that regard. But they're still a good team. There's a reason they are hosting this regional, and there's a reason Arkansas isn't, okay? We can talk all we want about Arkansas having this run this last month of the season. Reality is they didn't pull off wins against bad teams earlier on in the season, and that's why they have themselves here on the road in a regional that isn't theirs. And so they'll have to go to Kansas. Thankfully, it's relatively close to Northwest Arkansas here from Little Rock. It's 5 or 5.5 hours, so we'll see what the Razorbacks can do there against a tough Kansas team, but a Kansas team I think Arkansas will come out victorious against. And then, of course, also have the 4-seed Northeastern. Not the most flashy team, but it is flashy to know that they lead the country in stolen bases. They have over 200 stolen bases this season, and that is in their conference. I wonder how they would do if they face off against the top catcher in the country in Ryder Helfrich. So that's Arkansas's regional that they have. One last thing to note before we move on to the next regional. The average RPI, a metric used, the metric that I think Arkansas got hosed and didn't get their own regional, the RPI. The average RPI of all these teams is 38. That is first in the country of all the regionals, which is to say, according to the RPI, this is the toughest regional in all of college baseball postseason. So a tough draw for the Razorbacks, according to the RPI, which is the very metric that the reason Arkansas is not hosting their own regional. So you can say what you want about the RPI, but that's the statistics behind that. The last stat I will give, Kansas against teams in the NCAA tournament, not the regional, but the NCAA tournament. Listen to this. Kansas, 4 wins and 3 losses at home. And again, they're playing this game in Lawrence. They're playing it at home. Kansas against Kansas against NCAA tournament teams has won 4 and lost 3. That stat makes me confident that Arkansas can do this. Maybe Kansas gets them in game 6 down the line or something, but I think overall Arkansas will come out victorious and head to Atlanta for the Super Regional. I think that's probably where their season ends, in the Super Regional against Atlanta. They're pitching, or against Georgia Tech, because they're Arkansas's pitching is not good enough, and Georgia Tech's bats are really good. So that is the Lawrence Regional. Let's now move on to Little Rock's Regional, which is obviously not in Little Rock, but it's in Hattiesburg. Southern Miss is the host of that. If you're like, who's Southern Miss? That's not a big power name. You're correct in saying that or thinking that, but at the same time, you're not correct. I mean, it's good. Little Rock doesn't have to play an SEC team like last year when they had to face off against LSU. They're even being talked about. There's projections of Little Rock being a 4 seed. In one of these regionals. They're not. They're a 3 seed. They're not. They're a 4 seed in this regional. Southern Miss, the 1 seed. Jacksonville State, a really good 3 seed. And then Virginia, a really good 2 seed in their regional. So just like the Razorbacks, it's double elimination. Little Rock will have to do, well, a lot to come out victorious. Remember last year they had such a good run in the Baton Rouge Regional, almost made it on to the Super Regional. They were the only team to beat LSU at all in the postseason last year. Maybe they're the only team to beat Southern Miss. Maybe Southern Miss goes on to win it all. You don't know. Southern Miss, a team out of the Sun Belt. They're a great team. They were the Sun Belt regular season and tournament champions. Batting average, pretty good, but earned run average better, which is to say their pitching is really good. A top 10 pitching team in the country, led by Colby Allen. He leads them in ERA. He comes out of the bullpen. I don't know if the Trojans would see him on day one, but if Little Rock loses that game, then maybe beats Virginia, then maybe they can come out of the loser's bracket and possibly see Colby Allen at some point. They're also really efficient at fielding as Southern Miss, 16th in the country with a .981 fielding percentage. Southern Miss is a 40-win team. I mentioned them not being an SEC team and maybe not being talked about as much, but they've done better things than SEC opponents at times this season. They have wins against Oregon State, Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. That's 3 SEC teams and 1 really good team in Oregon State. Now, they did lose to a couple of those teams later on in the season, so they've shown some up and down traits, but they've got 40-plus wins this season, and they're certainly worthy to host a regional. They're the number 9 overall seed, so they're really close to being able to host a super regional, but not quite. They're a good team, and Little Rock will have to be ready to go. I assume Brandon Westermoreland, their ace, will get the nod when this game gets going. Friday at 1 o'clock at Southern Miss. These other 2 teams, I mentioned Jacksonville State. Gosh, they're a good team. To be a 3 seed, they're a good team. They've got 40-plus wins. They've got wins against Auburn 2 times this season. Yeah, the Auburn Tigers, that's a top 8 nationally ranked team. They played Alabama twice. They were close with Alabama. They've got a top 50 batting average team, a top 10 pitching team. Stephen Cash leads the way with an under 3 ERA for Jacksonville State. They're a good team. They're a scary team. You think the 3 seed, and you think maybe you don't know that name. Think again, because it's a good team. That Little Rock, if they perchance they play Jacksonville State, we'll have to be ready for. Maybe not as much as Southern Miss, but we'll have to be ready for them. And then finally, Virginia, the 2 seed. I haven't even talked about them. Statistically, they're not amazing, but they also play in a much harder conference than all these other teams. And so that's why nothing jumps off to the page to me as far as fielding, hitting, and pitching. Virginia, the Cavs, are still a really good team, and historically, of course, they are as well. So if Little Rock faces off against Virginia, they'll need to be ready to go as well. So that is the Hattiesburg Regional for Little Rock in the baseball world.